Welcome to Thrive with Pride from AgeOptions, an online space for LGBT older adults and those who care for them. This is a recording of a live event held on Zoom, which included a lively Q&A that we did not record. This month, we spoke with Margaret Danilovich, who discusses how to maintain health and function as we age, with practical tips on exercise and making a plan to succeed. Make sure to see the links below in the video description for resources on how you can put Margaret's advice into action, including free exercise classes from CJE and AgeOptions. Welcome to Thrive with Pride. It's my absolute pleasure this morning to introduce Margaret Danilovich. Margaret is the Senior Director of the Leonard Shanfield Research Institute at CJE Senior Life and the Director of the DPT MPH program at Northwestern University. A physical therapist by background, Margaret's research focuses on exercise interventions for older adults. So welcome so much, Margaret. Thank you for being here. I'm really looking forward to this presentation.
Thanks, me too. Thanks for the invitation. I'm going to go ahead and just share my presentation. All right, so really excited to hopefully be presenting on something that's a timely topic right now, which is for us to think about sort of healthy movement for the new year. So I'd like us to start here and take a look at this picture. And as we look at this individual, let's make some guesstimates. How old do you think this person is? Feel free to shout out some answers here.
Say 70.
70, okay. Other thoughts?
I was going to say 85.
Okay. Any other guesses? How come no one is saying that this person looks like they are 16 or 21? What are the things that are cluing you in to the fact that this person isn't a teenager?
Her hands.
What about her hands? You're right.
They don't look young. They don't look. I don't know how to say it. They just don't look young.
Yeah, so one of the things we know that happens as we get older in terms of our skin is we start to get that sort of wrinkled appearance. We have changes in the collagen in our skin. And so we actually start to feel like our skin gets a little bit more parchment looking, and it gets thinner than when we are older. We also kind of get those like age spots, those darkened spots that we can sort of see on this person's hands. Any other things you're seeing about this person's appearance that makes you think that this person is older?
Her neck.
Okay, you're right. What do you see there?
The skin is more wrinkled, not as taut as it is when you're younger.
Exactly. So it's that loss of elasticity. We're seeing those wrinkles. If we saw this person, are there any concerns that you might say, oh, this person looks, a little bit more frail or fragile, or do we make a guess that this person is very robust and healthy? What are our thoughts here?
I would say from her body structure that she looks very frail and probably very thin and has very little fat content in her body to take her through an emergency situation that she might face.
I agree. You summed that up perfectly. We see this sort of thin appearance. She's got these rounded shoulders. She looks like if a gust of wind came or today's weather, she could fall down and get knocked over. Well, in actuality, this woman's name is Catherine Byers. She's 85 years old, and she just ran the Boston Marathon.
Whoa.
Wow.
So one of the things we know with aging, like this, work perks piece of chocolate that turns out to be a bar of soap, Looks are very deceiving when it comes to aging. And what we might think about how a person looks or guess about how they function might not really be true. And so as we think about our chronologic age, the number of years that we've been on this planet, that number doesn't really matter unless you are a cheese. So as we're thinking about aging and healthy movement, regardless of our chronologic age, we know that exercise and physical activity is probably the best thing a person can do across their entire lifespan and across any kind of medical or health conditions that a person has. So if someone is 55 and more frail, or 85 and running the Boston Marathon, exercise is perhaps the single greatest intervention we have to promote healthy aging across the entire lifespan. So a point about terminology. Sometimes we think about exercise and physical activity, and people use those terms interchangeably. In fact, physical activity is actually our umbrella term. So the definition of physical activity is any body movement that's produced by your muscles that is more than sitting. So if I go out for a walk, I'm being physically active. If I am scrubbing my floors, I'm being physically active. If I am cleaning out my car or putting away my Christmas decorations, I'm being physically active. It's anything we're doing more than sitting. Now, under this umbrella term are terms like exercise and sport and leisure activities. So if I go out and I decide to play tennis, I'm playing a sport, I'm also being physically active. If I go to exercise, let's say I go to the Y in Oak Park and take a Zumba class, I'm exercising, I'm pursuing something that's very intentional and structured. That's our definition for exercise. I'm also being physically active. So a lot of times we use these terms interchangeably, but overall, we know that as the umbrella term, physical activity is really what we want to promote in aging. So in 2018, the US National Physical Activity Guidelines, an updated version, were released. And what they recommended for older adults was, first and foremost, we have to avoid inactivity. And this is based on research data that we have, that other researchers out there have, that shows people over the age of 65 will often sit for 90% of their waking hours. And so when we think about the activities that many of us might engage with, so even something like today, we're participating in something that is hopefully cognitively stimulating. It's giving us some social engagement, but it is also something that is a seated activity. So we know that there's lots and lots of inactivity in our society, in our culture. So much of what we do in everyday life is sitting. So any action that you can take to replace sitting behavior with standing behavior is a step in the right direction. So it can be examples of things like, on today's call, stand for some of the presentation. We're on Zoom, nobody can see you. This is sort of the thing of like a standing desk. People are replacing sitting behavior with standing. We want to really try to avoid inactivity as much as possible. The guidelines say that for aerobic physical activity, things that elevate our heart rate and are really working to improve our cardiovascular system, we should strive to achieve 150 minutes each week of moderately intense physical activity, Or if you turn up the intensity, you're being active at a more vigorous intensity, the number of minutes goes down. We also want to think about muscle strengthening activities. So activities that build our muscle mass and muscle capacity. This is critical with aging because we know that between the ages, or actually after the age of 30, we lose about 1% of our muscle strength per year. So between the age of 30 and 80, we are losing about 50% of our muscle strength, and that's normal aging. So if we're more sedentary, if we have health conditions that make us more inactive, we're going to lose even more strength, and that's going to limit our ability to do all of the activities of daily living that we need to do. So the guidelines say we need to think about engaging in muscle strengthening activities 2 days per week to the major muscle groups of our body. And then third is that if you are at risk for falling, we should add in exercises to improve balance. I have a lot of people say to me, but I'm not at risk for falling. I'm steady on my feet. We know that 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 fall each year. So even on this call, we can sort of, look and guesstimate, like we're not immune. People are going to have these conditions happen. And especially here in the Chicagoland area where we have snow and ice and environments like poor sidewalks that have cracks in them that put our bodies a little bit more at risk, we should just always include those exercises to improve balance and act as if we are at risk for falling and not assume we aren't. So 150 minutes of aerobic activity, muscle strengthening 2 or more days a week, and add those balance activities in. So I want to first start talking about aerobic exercise. So this is any physical activity that gets your heart rate and your breathing rate up. So it's walking, it's biking, it's swimming, it's dancing, it's cleaning the house. It's anything that you are doing that is getting your heart rate elevated and causing you to breathe a little bit more frequently. So when we look at large data sets of activity, aerobic activity that older adults participate in, on average, people that are over the age of 65 get only 4.9 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity each day. So that's about 35 minutes per week on average, and our goal is 150 minutes. So there is a huge gap between what we are doing and what we should be doing. One of the key things that I see is that people will say, oh, I'm very active. I go out for walks. And that's wonderful. Again, we want to meet that first recommendation to avoid inactivity. But for the best health benefits, we want to turn that intensity up. So I see a lot of people who might be active at a light intensity, but when we get to that moderate intensity where it's raising your heart rate, you're breathing a little bit more deeply, that's where people on average are only getting 5 minutes a day. Why this is important is because one of the measures of our aerobic kind of capacity and our overall fitness is something called our Vo2 Max. It's the maximum amount of oxygen that our body is able to process per kilogram of our body weight per minute. So when we look at this chart on the right side of the screen here, what we see is this sort of precipitous decline that starts after about the age of 60. So our middle life age is about 30 to 50. We're not seeing that much decline. But once we start to get to 60 and older, we see the slope of this line trending far down for both men and women. We know that on average, normal aging is associated with about a 10% decline in this Vo2 max, in our capacity per decade. And why this matters is because activities associated with staying in our home, being able to do house cleaning, being able to go grocery shopping and carry groceries, being able to take a shower, those things require endurance. And they require an endurance level of about 20 milligrams or milliliters per kilogram per minute. So it's right on the bottom of this chart. So the good news is in normal aging, all of our values of capacity are above that threshold. But if we have a health condition, if we're less active, if we're very deconditioned, and our capacity goes below that threshold, it means we're no longer able to do those things that we need to do to remain safe at home. So this is the person who says to me, I took a shower and I was so exhausted that I needed to lie down for 4 hours, because they don't have that aerobic capacity to be able to do it. Or it's the person who says, I can't go grocery shopping anymore because I just don't have the energy to do it. So I'm now residing upon, just a microwave meal. And so their nutrition declines, their protein intake declines, they now lose more muscle mass, and we get into this very vicious cycle. So it is really critical to remain aging the way we want, and aging in place and aging with good health, to keep our capacity up so we can do all of these activities of daily living. So our prescription for aerobic exercise, and our prescription for exercise in general, follows this template called FIT: frequency, intensity, time, and type. So for aerobic exercise, truly, we want to be thinking about every day we are taking in some of this heart healthy and health promoting aerobic activity. There's clear evidence that there is what we call a dose response relationship, meaning the more you do and the more intense it is, the more health benefits you will have. So you want to achieve at least that moderate intensity where you feel like your heart rate is getting elevated, you're breathing a little bit more deeply. If you were exercising with a friend, you would feel like you could have a conversation, but it would be a little bit more labored. You could talk, but you could not sing. So you could have that conversation, but you're breathing a little bit more frequently. It's not like how I'm talking right now, where I'm just talking a mile a minute and barely coming up for air. So you can judge yourself and judge that intensity with what we call this talk test, that you could have this conversation, and if it's feeling easy and light, you're probably not engaging as intensely as you need to. So you want to turn up the speed, move faster, or turn up the resistance, like if you're on a bicycle, to give yourself more of that aerobic challenge. Our goal is 150 minutes per week. If you are not there yet, that's okay. So if you are one of those people who says, I'm getting 30 minutes a week, that's fine. That's where you start. We know you can safely increase the amount of activity by about 5 to 10% each week. So one of the things I see often in the new year is people say, okay, New Year's resolution, I'm going to go and hit the gym hard. And then they say, I'm so sore and my ankle hurts and my knees are killing me. They've cranked it from a 0 to 100 and they've not really ramped up their physical activity. So then they get an injury and then they feel bad and then they just stop. So to prevent that from happening, we want to increase your activity by about 5 to 10% each week as a guideline. So phase yourself into it to actually stick with this behavior. The type of aerobic activity is truly anything you enjoy. This sounds, when I say it, it's like so common sense. In some ways, I can't even believe we researched this. but things you like, you're going to stick with, duh, common sense. So if you enjoy activities and you make them pleasurable, you're more likely to stick with it. So for me, this might be going to the health club and having a book on tape or a magazine that I really want to read, and I'm on the treadmill and I'm watching this. Or I'm putting a movie on and I'm bicycling on a stationary bike because I'm enjoying that experience, and I'm making the activity more pleasurable. It's why music is so powerful with exercise and movement. We enjoy the music. We tend to work harder. It goes by. It's more fun. So whatever it is for you to make the activity fun, that's what you need to do to make this behavior stick. Make it pleasurable. So now, as we think about resistance exercise, so resistance exercise is any activity that works your muscles against a load or against resistance. So it can be using resistance bands, it can be using free weights, it could be using machines at a fitness facility, it can be even using your own body weight. So a push-up is an example of a resistance exercise that uses no equipment. I'm on the floor and I'm pushing my body weight up against gravity. The key here is that this is working your muscles against a load. There is resistance in the form of external resistance, the bands, the weights, the machines, or gravity. So let's take a time now, and we're actually going to check your strength, because one of the things we know with aging is that your strength is a large component of our balance, and it's how we keep on our feet. If our muscles are strong, we tend to have better balance. So what we're going to do right now, and you can feel free to participate or not, whatever you want to do, we're going to do something called the sit to stand test. So you're going to stay seated on your chair. Your arms are going to be across your chest. When I say go, you're going to rise from the chair, come back down as fast as you can. Your goal is to do as many repetitions as possible. You want to come all the way up, all the way down. If you need your hands to push from the chair, that's okay. But ideally, we want our hands across our chest. We're going to do this for 30 seconds. I want you to keep track of how many repetitions you get. So when you come up, that's 1. When you come up again, that's 2. So I'm going to give us a countdown of 3, 2, 1, and I'll say go, and then we're going to get started. All right. So 3, 2, 1, and go. As many repetitions as you can. And stop. All right, great job. So our threshold for what we would say is someone who might not have as much strength as they could have is about 12 to 14 repetitions. So if you are getting above that 12 to 14 threshold, great work. If you're in that 12 to 14, that's usually a sign, let's, keep that up. We need to maintain it, but you also have the opportunity to improve. If you're below that threshold, that is our sign to say it is time to engage in resistance exercises to build your strength, because that strength of our muscles is so critical to maintain balance as we age and physical function. We need muscle strength to get out of a chair, to get off the toilet, to get in and out of a car, to walk. It is what we need to allow our bodies to move. So if you're below that threshold, that is really the sign to say, hey, New Year's resolution, time to work on some of that resistance exercise. Oops. Let me get my slides back here. Okay. When we look at the research on resistance exercise, unfortunately, we know that only 1 out of every 5 older people actually regularly participate in resistance exercise in this 2 days a week prescription. Lots of people say, I don't like it, it's hard, I don't have equipment, I don't enjoy it. And so one of the things we did recently in partnership with some colleagues at Penn State University was to look at a resistance exercise program that people could do at home that didn't require any equipment and was extremely fast. So we prescribed them to do 30 seconds of what you just did, sit to stand, and 30 seconds of push-ups each day. If people couldn't do push-ups on the floor, they could do them on the wall, they could do them on a desk at an incline, but set a timer for 30 seconds, do the push-ups, set a timer for 30 seconds, do your sit to stand. And what we found was that people actually really kept up with this. We had very high adherence rates, and doing it got people stronger. They were able to do more activity when they exercised. So it doesn't even need to be, I'm going to the gym and I'm exercising and I'm doing all this. There are those little things that you can do at home, as many repetitions as possible of something as easy as the chest press and a sit to stand. So our prescription for resistance exercise is that our frequency is about 2 to 3 times per week. Our intensity here is moderate to high. In fact, the higher you go, the more muscle overload you're actually going to get and the more strength you're going to have for your muscles. When we are thinking about the ideal intensity, one of the ways that we measure intensity in resistance exercise is through something called our 1 rep max, which means the maximum weight we could lift one time. So the way we determine this sort of in the clinic or with a personal trainer is to give a person a weight and say, okay, if we're going to do a bicep curl, I'm bringing my hand to my shoulder and bending my elbow. What's the maximum weight I could do? So I might grab a 50-pound weight and I can do that one time. That would be my 1 repetition maximum. So my ideal intensity would be about 70 to 80% of what my 1 repetition maximum would be. So it's a very high amount. One of the things that we see, and actually it's part of the Choosing Wisely campaign, which is a public health campaign to sort of eliminate bad practices in healthcare. And one of the Choosing Wisely initiatives is that there's a lot of underdosed resistance exercise, meaning people go and they exercise and they say, oh, I'm just going to grab a 2-pound weight. A gallon of milk weighs 8 pounds. So we need to be lifting much heavier weights to overload our muscles and prepare our bodies to have the strength to do all of the activities of daily living. If you don't have, access to doing all this 1 repetition maximum, the other way to do it is to say, what is the weight that I can do for 10 repetitions? And that's about it. Because if I pick up a 2-pound weight, I could do that 30 pounds. It's not heavy enough. If I pick up a 50-pound weight, that's my maximum. I'm only doing it one time, so that's too heavy. So this is very much like Goldilocks. What is the amount that's just right? And our just right weight amount is something you can do 10 times. So if you don't have weights at home, there's lots of other kind of resistance forms you could do. Any kind of like laundry detergent, dishwasher detergent, things that have handles, they make for really awesome resistance because you can lift those pretty easily. Grocery bags, and you can throw books in them and make that heavier so you've got that to hold on to. You can also then use, if you have a scale at home, to sort of see how much weight is in that. but your target is something that you're doing for 10 repetitions to really overload your muscles. So as we think about balance, the number one most recommended intervention for balance is exercise. And our comprehensive prescription to improve people's balance is to engage in both resistance, aerobic, and balance specific. So our resistance exercise needs to be that higher intensity, more than 70% of the maximum weight that you can lift twice a week. Our goal for aerobic exercise is that 150 minutes per week at that moderate to high intensity. And then when we think about balance exercise, we also want something that is at a moderate to high intensity. It needs to challenge our balance. So if we are standing and saying, oh, I don't feel unsteady at all, that's not working on our balance. We actually need to do activities that make us slightly unsteady. So exercises where we feel like our ankles are wobbling a little bit, or we feel a little shaky. That's actually giving our bodies the stimulus that we need to improve our balance. There's also research that says you need to practice balance exercises for at least 50 hours to see an improvement in your balance. So I put this point here because one of the things, especially as we move into the new year and with New Year's resolutions, we know that people are gung-ho at the beginning and it kind of drops off. Or I've eaten healthy for a week. Why haven't I lost any weight? Why are my clothes the same size? It's the same thing here too. We can't go and exercise for a week and then just say, well, why is my balance not any better? It takes sort of a lot of time in many ways to put the necessary dosage of exercise into our bodies to see those improvements. So let's check our balance. All right, what we're going to do is, again, if you feel comfortable, is to stand in your space. And if you have a chair close by to hold on to or a desk, that's great. What we're going to do is practice our one-legged stance. So I'm just trying to get where you can see my feet better. Okay, so I'm going to stand on one foot. I'm going to start with my right foot. I'm going to take my left foot and I'm going to put it at my sort of heel here and ankle. What we're going to do is when you feel steady on your feet, you're going to let go with your hand. We're going to try to hold this position for 15 seconds. So we'll get into this sort of balanced position on one foot. You've got your hand on a chair or a desk. I'm going to give you 3, 2, 1, and then you're just going to let go and see how it feels. So 3, 2, 1, let's balance. And go ahead and stop. So that was 15 seconds. If that felt shaky to you, that's a sign maybe it's time to work a little bit on your balance. If you felt like you couldn't let go of the chair, or you felt like, oh, I really can't hold this position, that is our sign. It's time to really engage in very specific balance exercises. So it's a new year, it's a fresh start. How do we come into 2022 with the best intentions and keep them stick? Research would show that setting resolutions actually doesn't really work. Most of them, 4 out of 5, fail by February, and overall 92% fail. So only 8% of people are really successful at making those changes in their diet, their activity, or behaviors like stopping smoking. So if these resolutions don't work, like, why do we keep setting them? Well, one of the reasons we know that many of our resolutions fail is that people don't have a plan. On New Year's Eve, they just say, this is the year I'm going to stop smoking, or this is the year I'm going to lose 100 pounds. They don't actually engage in the most important part of setting a resolution, which is the planning. The second piece is often our resolutions don't have a focus on the underlying sort of issue. So if our issue is about, or our resolution is, I want to just lose weight. Well, we need to think about why. So what is that going to actually allow you to do? Or why are you unhappy with the current weight you are at? What is that going to unlock? And so it's really a cognitive process to sort of think through what are all of the factors that are underlying what I want to do. And maybe I need to change some of those things rather than the resolution I'm trying to set. So how do we, think about making resolutions stick? It really starts with our planning. And so, I can send these slides out to Kate later, but I would really encourage everyone to think about any of our health behaviors. This is sort of our template for how we want to create change that sticks. So in our action plans, we want to think about sort of being a journalist. It's the who, what, when, where, why, and how. We want to think first, what is the behavior I want to change? So identify what the specific behavior is. And the more specific we can be, the better. So if it's, I want to eat healthier, well, what does healthier mean to you? Is that I want to eat fewer times at fast food restaurants? I want to eat more vegetables each week. Like, get it as specific as possible. Who do you want to do this behavior with? So and who do you want to tell about this behavior? So, I think smoking is one of those behaviors that has a very large social component to it. So if you're going to think about a behavior like smoking cessation, like, who does this behavior change impact? Who do you need to notify? Who are you going to involve that is perhaps a non-smoker that can help steer you and keep you sticking to your resolution? Where do you want to engage in this behavior? So for exercise, it might be, where am I going to exercise? For a nutritional focused action plan, it might be, where am I going grocery shopping? It's being as specific as possible. When we want to do things, we want to identify and actually schedule this behavior change into our calendar. So making appointments for yourself for things like, this is my exercise time. This is my meal preparation time. That's going to give us another reminder to help that behavior stick. How am I going to do it? And we want to be, as specific as we can be. So if it's smoking cessation or refraining from drinking, it's how am I going to actually engage in that behavior when the urge strikes? And what resources do I need to sort of be successful? So people might say, well, I want to eat healthier. Well, we need actually a lot of resources in some ways to do that. We need recipes. We need knowledge of what we want to prepare for food. We need the utensils and the skills to actually prepare them. And so people sometimes will say, well, this is my behavior that I want to change. I want to eat more vegetables. Do you know how to cook them? No. Do you know where to go to find recipes for them? No. So we want to think about getting all those resources and knowledge up front. So if my behavior is something like, I want to engage in more physical activity each week. So that's my behavior. I want to get it even more specific. Maybe it's, I want to go swimming 3 times per week. Who am I going to go do it with? This is something that I'm going to go do by myself at the Oak Park Y. I'm going to go to lap swimming at 2 to 3 o'clock. I'm going to block my calendar from 1:30 to 3:30, so I have enough time to drive over there to change into my bathing suit. Oh, that reminds me, what resources do I need? I need a bathing suit. I need a Y membership. I need transportation that's reliable to get me to and fro. So you've got to sort of think through all of those different steps. So this process of action planning actually takes a long time. Like, it's a lot of reflection and sitting down and saying, okay, what are all the steps and how is this actually going to work? Now, one of the key things is we need to plan for relapses. A common misconception, I think, is people say, I'm just going to do this, and just like magic, it happens. Whereas we would actually be better off to come into this and say, you know what, I want to quit smoking, but I know I'm going to relapse. It's bound to happen. And so if we say up front, we know that relapses are going to happen, we can put into place a plan for what happens when they do. One of the things we know from diet and exercise research is sort of like when people get out of the habit, sometimes it's hard to get back on the horse again. Or people will say, oh, I ate badly for lunch because I went out and I had pizza and then I ate a candy bar. The whole rest of the day is just a waste now. I'm just going to indulge and I'll start again tomorrow. So that's sort of a plan for relapse, but there's a tendency in human behavior just to say, oh, I messed up, I'm just going to write this off. Rather, we want to plan for relapses even before. So as part of our action plan, we need to say, what are the things that could get in my way? And what are the obstacles that are going to prevent me from achieving my desired behavior change? So for something like a behavior like smoking cessation, one of the common barriers that people say is, this is the activity that I do with my friends. And so what's going to get in my way is that all my friends are doing this. Or if it's less drinking, like this is the activity that my friends and I enjoy. We get together and this is our activity. For exercise, it's snowing. The weather's terrible. That's going to get in my way. So we want to identify all of the various things and things that might be more probable and things that might be less probable. What could get in my way? My car could break down and I've got no transportation over to the Y. So what will I do if that happens? I'm going to take the bus. I'm going to Uber. I'm going to walk. I'm going to call a friend. What's going to get in my way? My friends all smoke. They want to do this as a social thing. So what will I do? When they are going out, I'm going to find my friend who doesn't smoke and connect with that friend. My friends enjoy going out to a bar. What's going to get in my way? Well, I'm going to preemptively say, let's go to a bar, but I'm going to be the designated driver for the evening. Or I'm going to suggest an activity that our friend group can do that doesn't involve alcohol. And the reason we want to be so detailed is the more we plan, the better it is for us to really understand all the obstacles, because when things happen in the moment, it requires a ton of cognitive energy to draw upon that plan. And so in the moment, it's very easy to be like, oh, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to kind of go along with that. But if we have our plans already put together, it's a lot easier. It's not easy. It's easier to say, oh, I've identified this is a trigger. This is one of my obstacles. I'm pulling out plan B, and that's the plan I'm going to go on. But if I haven't even thought about those possibilities, people don't have the ability to sort of generate that in the spur of the moment. So our key really here is to be as detailed as possible as you can for the behaviors you want to change. And really importantly, plan for those relapses, because they are going to occur. And so the more we can plan in advance, the better. I want to provide a number of resources, again, because this is talking more about healthy movement. So one of the things that often comes up is people say, well, the weather's bad, or I don't have, funds to support a fitness class. So there's a lot of really free and affordable resources out there. Silver Sneakers and offers a number of exercise programs on their website. YouTube, if you type in, Pilates class for older adults, or yoga for older adults, or low impact aerobics, you're going to get lots and lots of videos that come up. And the advantage of YouTube is this piece of make your activity fun. So if it's not a video you like, just turn on the next one. You never have to do it again. You're not locked into like a fitness facility. We also have a number of exercise classes that are offered through my organization, CJE Senior Life, as well as through AgeOptions. And Kate can get that information out to you after the presentation. Also in the chat is a link to a fall screening questionnaire. So if you're concerned about falls, you can go through that questionnaire. This is the CDC study tool. Go through those questionnaires, see how you're doing. Through our grant to CJE Senior Life for fall prevention, we actually have the opportunity to do some one-on-one fall screening. So if that is of interest, I've got my email at the end of the slides, and you can reach out to me to schedule that. And so with that, I just want to wish everyone a very happy and healthy new year. There's my email. You can reach out with any questions.
Thanks again to Margaret Danilovich for a great presentation. Please see the video description below for a copy of Margaret's slides and more information on free resources to get moving. Please join us for our next monthly event on Tuesday, January 25th, 2022, when we'll host a live presentation and Q&A on senior benefits. Tune in to hear about the benefits you may be eligible for and learn how to give back to your community as a volunteer benefits educator. You can find more information and the link to join at our website, thrivingwithpride.org, or in the video description below. Thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon.